Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Stroke Talks. I am Sybil, the owner and host here at Stroke Talks, and I'm really excited to share not only my story here at Stroke Talks, but fellow warriors' stories as well when it comes to their personal stories, journey, and testimonials when it comes to their stroke. Yes, y'all, I am a little nervous. Talking about my stroke is extremely uncomfortable for me, but I know that it's important to help save lives, right? Sharing my story brings awareness and it helps other stroke warriors as well as caregivers, family members, and friends understand where their loved ones, what they are dealing with. And it also will bring awareness to help save lives. So we're going to go ahead and get episode 1 started. So again, my name is Sybil Jones, and my stroke story began April 17th of 2021. Now, looking at me, I do not fit your typical stroke candidate. I don't know if that's not the right term to say, but person who you would expect to have a stroke, right? I didn't know much about strokes at all before my own stroke, but when I heard of someone having a stroke, they were someone who was old. They were elderly or had health issues, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Those are two of your commonly known risk factors when it comes to stroke, right? I was not old, in my 40s, healthy, no blood pressure, I had blood pressure. I had no high blood pressure or high cholesterol, healthy, doing everything right as far as my health. My stroke was caused by a rare cause known as carotid webbing. Okay, we will dig into that a little later in this episode, or I may just have a completely separate episode talking about carotid webbing. But right now, I want to take you back to April 17th of 2021. It was a Saturday. My day began like any other Saturday, which was me not getting out of bed until about 9 o'clock, maybe 9:30 a.m. Yeah, I like to relax on Saturdays. But that Saturday morning, I got up, did my regular routine of taking my dog Carlos. We had a little Maltese at that time. Took him out for his morning bathroom break. Came back in the house, got dressed, took our middle daughter to her riding practice. So she used to ride competitive horseback riding. So that day they had a 3-hour practice. Took her to the barn. I do not do horses. So I usually would sit in the car. Sometimes I would go up to the stable and talk to the other moms. But that particular Saturday, I did sit in the car. I did a little bit of work. So we were there about 4.5 hours, right? Drove home, took a shower because we had a party to attend that evening. So took a shower. I took a nap after my shower. I did take a nap, but that wasn't anything uncommon for me, right? Because we were going out. We were going to be at a party. I was the designated driver that evening because the party was for my husband. And I knew I was going to be running my mouth and dancing and just having a good time. So I did lay down. I took a nap, woke up, finished getting dressed. We left. I do remember giving my instructions to our kids. We have three daughters. Of course, I had to yell at them before I left. Right, I had to do my little fussing at them before we left the house. Went to the party. We arrived. It was at a brewery in DC. So at that time, we were living in Metro DC. We were living in Northern Virginia. My husband was stationed in DC at the Pentagon. So if you didn't know, we are a military family. We now reside in Bahrain, but at that time, we were stationed in Washington, D.C. So we arrived to the party, and this picture right here, where you see me and my husband, we took that picture up on arrival to at the party. Okay, I was being myself. I'm a jokester, and my husband hates it when I do it, but I'm always like, "Oh, let me lick your face." That's just my signature pose for any picture with my husband. So we took that picture, met up with the rest of the people who were attending the party. It was a farewell party because we were moving. My husband was heading out to San Diego the beginning of May. I was staying behind with our girls to finish the school year, and we were going to move to California mid-June. So we met up with the other people who were attending his farewell party, ordered food, talking, having a good time. My husband was sitting at one end of the table. I was sitting at another end because I like to talk. I did not feel ill. I felt perfectly fine. There was no reason for me to think anything was going to happen. From this point of the story, I will be sharing with you what I was told because I don't know. I don't know what happened. So my last memory was there was a gentleman on my left and a lady on my right. I was sitting at the table, we're talking, and I took a sip of my beer. We were at a brewery, so I took just a couple of sips of my beer. I remember feeling a little woozy, and I couldn't see. Like I had completely blacked out. I could not see anything. So my thought at that time, right, and it was all quick. I thought, oh, am I drunk? Still unaware of anything. My husband told me that he had looked down at my end of the table, and he said that he noticed that I just had this look on my face of disgust. Like I was just disgusted with him for talking to his fellow service members, right? I was like, I didn't see you, dude. And the gentleman that was sitting next to me told me that at first he thought I was impersonating someone because he was like, it was like I began to slur. He's like, you began to slur your words, but he thought I was impersonating someone. Again, this was all quick. Like this was all like quick in a matter of seconds. He went down, got my husband, told my husband that something was wrong. My husband came to my end of the table, and he said as soon as he approached me, he saw that the entire left side of my face had drooped. That is facial droop, right? The F for fast for the stroke acronym, the symptoms, he recognized it because his grandmother had a stroke several years prior. They immediately called 911. But in the meantime, they told me that, and again, this was all like in a matter of seconds, that I was unconscious, like I just been unconscious and slapped my face. I was sitting down, slapped my face forward on the picnic table. I do crack a little joke and say, "Oh, at least it didn't mess up my face." That's bad stroke joke, but that's okay. I can crack that joke for myself. They did rush me to the ambulance. Did rush me to the hospital there in Northern Virginia. They administered the blood clot medication to break up the clot. It did not take. That medication did not take. My husband shared with me that when I arrived, I get nervous talking about this. I'm gonna not cry talking about it. I'm gonna try not to cry as I talk about it. But he said that once they rushed me in, the doctors told him, we are 90 some odd percent sure that she is having a stroke. We can administer the clot busting medication, may or may not take. If it's, they told him all of the information, what could happen. He signed the paperwork. The medication, like I said, it did not take. So they made the decision to transfer me to another hospital there in Northern Virginia, Inova, Fairfax, which is a stroke. One of the, I forgot what it is, but it's a stroke. They have the latest technology to deal with strokes. Okay, so they did transfer me there. They immediately took me back for surgery. Again, spoke with my husband, let him know what the risk factors were, and they determined that the blood clot was deep within the right side of my brain, and they did perform a thrombectomy. Went in, removed the blood clot. Now, this is where it begins to get really interesting, because they did pull they asked my husband about my medical history. He provided them, my medical history and any medical documents that he had. No medical risk. Again, no high blood pressure, no high cholesterol. There was one neurosurgeon. Now, he did share this with me, that he pleaded my case for over a week about the cause of my stroke, because it just did not make sense to anyone how this 40-something young woman, healthy otherwise, is having a stroke. He determined that it was caused by carotid webbing, which is a rare cause of stroke. And as I have been doing my research, I have found that it does present itself in African American women greater than any other population. Now, from the research I have done, it's mostly is asymptomatic. For whatever reason, it decided not to be asymptomatic for me. But what is carotid webbing? It is an extra layer of membrane in the carotid artery. So think of, I had like a little extra shelf in this carotid artery. And what they believe happened was just a fluke. For whatever reason, that day the blood had swirled, and they said it had swirled before, and it broke loose, it dissolved, and it was fine. But that particular day, it formed into a clot, it broke loose, and it got stuck in the brain. So a blood clot is an ischemic stroke that cuts the blood flow off from the brain. I do have an image of my brain that shows my brain at the time of the stroke from the imaging that they took. and then what it looked like once they were able to restore the blood flow when they removed the blood clot. Okay. So I was in ICU and on the stroke unit. I was in the hospital for a week. So, and interestingly enough, my husband did not share too much with me for a while. Other than, I mean, the doctors did talk to me once I was able to communicate again, but we did not sit down and really talk about what happened until probably in August, because I was like, I'm fine, right? I was in the hospital, ICU, stroke unit. I started speech therapy immediately, physical therapy immediately, occupational therapy immediately. All of those things started for me in the hospital. I went home, I was talking, I had full mobility. There were some things that were different for me, but I was fine until I wasn't. Okay. I was like, I'm recovered. I didn't understand because I had never had any medical emergencies like that before. Let me back up to this while I was in the hospital. Because I was in the hospital toward the end of COVID. So there were still COVID protocols in place. So yeah, of course, in ICU, I couldn't have any visitors. But once I was moved to the stroke unit, my husband was my only visitor. My girls couldn't come. And we were a military family, so we were in DC. So I just had my husband and my daughters. My sister-in-law did come and stay with the girls while I was in the hospital, and my best friend came, and my mother-in-law came when I got home. She came like a couple of weeks later. But I remember being in the hospital, and I was sad. I was sad. I was scared. I was lonely. I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't get up. All I wanted to do, y'all, was go to the bathroom. I wanted to get up and go to the bathroom. And I remember asking the nurse, can I go to the bathroom? And she kept telling me no. And she's like, can you feel, because I could not feel my left side of my body. I'm looking at my leg, but I could not feel my leg to really move my leg, if that makes sense, right? You're like, it's there, I see it, but there is no feeling there. But anywho, I remember, and I have my little bear, and if any of you have watched me do any videos online, not here at Stroke Talks, this is my first Stroke Talks live, but if you've seen any other videos I've ever done over the years, but especially now, you see this little bear. This little bear is the same age as I am. We both in our 40s. I'm not going to tell y'all how old I am for real. We in our 40s, but this little bear was a gift to me from my grandmother. And my grandmother passed in August of 2020. And I joke about when I had my stroke that my granny was like, Lord, not right now. Now just scare her. But no. We need her to live through this stroke, and it's quiet right now. If you bring her, if you bring her here to heaven with me, she's going to talk, and I'm enjoying my peace and quiet. So do not just scare her a little bit. But anywho, I'm rambling. Sorry, but my husband brought this bear to the hospital with me, and this little bear, it did lift my spirits. It did. And so I keep Barry, his name is Barry, because as a kid, I just called it Bear because I didn't know any better. All right, Bear, it's a bear. His name is Bear, so now it's Barry. He sits right here, and he reminds me of my granny. And anytime I'm about to say something I shouldn't say or get out of pocket, I see Barry and I'm like, okay, no, don't say that, Sybil. But anywho, so I told y'all that my husband, it was his farewell party. So he was leaving and he was going to be leaving in May. We did not leave until the end of June. We did remain in DC and we left together as a family the end of June. I was determined to keep things as normal as possible. I was like, no, you have orders to go to San Diego. We're going to go. We're going to continue. We're going to move on. I'm fine. I'll be all right. Now, mind you guys, I couldn't drive. So I was restricted from driving. And I didn't realize how much being able to drive was part of my independence. I didn't realize that until you're told you could not drive. And my family, they followed those rules. They took my car keys. You know, I remember asking, just let me pull the car out of the garage. I don't want to drive anywhere. I just want to pull the car out of the garage. But no. But anywho, so I started physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. Now, I did not have a slur. In the beginning, for the first couple of weeks, I did speak a little slower, right? Like the thought process was not there. Things were not connecting all the time. And even still to this day, there are some cognitive, not anything that is major. There isn't any major cognitive impairments, but there are some. Now, people tell me like, oh, I would never notice anything. I don't hear anything. But I will tell y'all, there are times I'm working extremely hard to just follow the processing. So part of my speech therapy wasn't so much into it as far was not so much focused on forming words. It was the cognitive side of just the processing, because things were slow. And there are like I said, there are times that there's still a disconnect. So I still hear a slur when I speak. My tongue is always heavy. It just feels heavy and big in my mouth. Okay, it does. So does my leg. So does my arm. My left side, my left arm, my right arm, or my left arm and my left leg, right? They're just heavy. And the sensation is not always there. That can get pretty interesting at times with hot and cold, even with picking things up and holding them, right? So I had to learn and I had to accept that it's okay to do, like I would do a lot of eye checks. If I'm holding a cup, if you know me in person, if you see me out, you will notice that there are times that I do a lot of glances back and forth. If I have a cup, like I have to remind myself, Sybil, you have something in your hand. You may not feel it, but there's something in your hand. And that was something too for me. Like the first few months, I would drop things because I couldn't feel it in my left hand. So I would drop it. But I will tell you, the hardest part of my journey has been the mental health side. So, with stroke, we think of the physical, right? Like you're looking for someone who has that facial droop, who has that gait, like their walk, the way they walk. You can tell if they've had a stroke from that, or the way that they carry their arm or their leg, or their speech, right? Looking at me, talking to me, you would probably never know. So those scars, I don't have any of those scars. I say that my scars are hidden, and it's the mental health side of stroke. And it's something that I don't hear people talking about. For me, I'm an open book. I will be honest with you. I struggled with anxiety, depression, and when I used to think when people would talk about anxiety, I'm like, oh, okay, you're nervous. You're nervous before a test, or you're nervous about speaking publicly. No, I I am always, I am always like my entire body screams at me all day, every day. I got to the point to where I was terrified to leave the house. I couldn't tell you why I was afraid to leave the house, but I just was afraid to leave my house. So I would get the nerves up to go, and it wasn't just me going by myself. It was me going out with my husband, going out with my kids, with friends. It didn't matter. I just did not want to leave my house. I was not actively thinking about my stroke. I do think a lot of my issues at that time was I was extremely self-conscious on how I sound to other people. Like, I was very self-conscious of how I sounded to people, how I behaved around people. And I just dropped this QR code here. This is Support Stroke Talks, because Stroke Talks is self-sustained. So if you would like to support by making a supportation, you can just scan that QR code and buy me a coffee, $5. Thank you. And it goes for producing this and all the other work that we're doing with Stroke Talks, because I will be hosting virtual and in-person events to support other stroke warriors. But I had to do that little plug for a minute there. But I was just extremely self-conscious going out. And I started, and my husband and I, we still talk about this to this day. It'll be 4 years. April 17th will be my 4-year stroke anniversary. And I do celebrate. I do celebrate it. So I'm celebrating life, because I know what could have been. I'm gonna back up to that night a little bit. Typically on a Saturday night, on a Saturday evening, at the time of us being at the brewery, at the party, I would have been in the bed. I'd have been asleep. And knowing that time is important, right? Onset of a stroke, getting help, that it's important, and knowing the severity of my stroke. Again, to see me, you wouldn't think anything. I know the outcome could have been completely different. Could have been unable to speak, unable to move, or not be here at all. But I'm here. And as scary as it is to talk about it, I know that I'm here for a reason. And so I'm like, I need to talk about it. And it's okay if I'm nervous, if I cry, um, if I get angry. Is that was the other part of the mental health side, right? I had I had no zero control of my emotions, right? Now, to know me, if you knew me before, know me now, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky lady. But it would be the slightest things. Like I would go from 0 to 1,000. Just complete irrational. Like I was. I will admit to that. But going back to leaving the house, I remember telling my husband, and again, like I said, me and my husband, we still talk about it to this day and we laugh about it a little bit. But he's like, you make things uncomfortable sometimes. I'm like, what? He said, within the first minute of meeting someone, you say, oh, I had a stroke. And I was like, dude, I know it's uncomfortable and it's awkward, but it was helping me feel comfortable. It was helping me calm my nerves because, I was like, I'm here. If I'm out somewhere and I have another stroke, I want people not to just look at me and think, what is this lady doing? Is she drunk? What's wrong with her? They'd be like, oh, she did mention that she had a stroke. Oh, maybe she's having another stroke. Let me call 911. Because again, I've thought about this. I've thought about this at the party, that the gentleman and the lady who were sitting on either side of me, they could have easily chalked it up to, oh, Marcus's wife is drunk. At that time, my husband was a commander. Oh, Commander Jones's wife is drunk. That's what they could have said and just left me there. So, people, I'm going to tell you, if you are out with loved ones, with family, with loved ones, friends, stranger, if someone, don't dismiss them as being drunk. So the signs of stroke, remember the acronym B FAST. B, someone's balance. E, eyes. Can they ask them if they can see you? Is there blurry vision? Like what's going on with their eyesight? F, face. Is one side of their face drooping? I remember in the hospital, the doctors and the nurses, when they would come in, they would all ask me to smile. And I was like, why do y'all keep asking me to smile? Like, what? A, arms. Can they lift their arms? Is one side drooping? If one side is drooping, if one side is kind of just floating around out there, like just floating around, they could be having a stroke. S, speech. Is their speech slurring? And T, time. Call 911. And when you call 911, tell them that someone is having a stroke. When my husband, because my husband was the one who ended up calling 911, he said, my wife is having a stroke. So when the EMTs arrived, they were ready. They knew, okay, we have a stroke victim. And that helped them route them to the proper hospital. As people, every hospital is not equipped to take a stroke patient. Okay, so when you make that phone call, say they're having a stroke. People have asked me this question. Did you know? I didn't know. I didn't know anything. I have met fellow stroke warriors who said they did know that they were having onset of a stroke. One lady I met, she drove herself to the hospital. I had no indicators, none. Like I said, I'd been out that day with my daughter. I drove. I drove her to her riding practice, drove her home. I had on some heels, y'all, and I have finally built up the strength and the courage to wear those heels again. I was terrified. I kept the heels, but I was terrified of those shoes. But I've been wearing them. And the other thing too, I couldn't wear heels. So all I could wear for a while were flat tennis shoes, which is still interesting because I do love my heels still to this day. But as I told you guys earlier, I don't have feeling about the left side. So sometimes I don't feel the ground, but I'm like, okay, come on, Sybil, doop, doop, doop. Like, hear the click of the heels. I'm like, click, click, click. I'm like, all right, boom, you good. But let me look at my notes real quick. I'm gonna wrap this up because I can come here and talk to y'all at any time because it is my show. But I do want to let you know that stroke recovery goes beyond the physical therapy. It goes beyond the occupational therapy. It goes beyond the speech therapy. It is okay to get mental health therapy. I did not at first. I didn't because I was fine. And it took my husband and my kids, but really my husband, threatening to drop me off. We had moved to San Diego. We were in San Diego. He was like, he's like, if you do not make this appointment, we're going to make this appointment together. He's like, I will take you and I will drop you. I was like, whoa, what? Really, dude? So I did go in to see my primary doctor, which I was still under the care of a neurologist when we moved from Virginia or DC to San Diego. I just transferred everything. So I continued with physical therapy and occupational therapy. And I started mental health therapy. So, and I was still under the care of a neurologist. So I'm still to this day. So I actually, it's time for me to get another MRI. So I was getting an MRI done once a year just for them to keep an eye on. There was 3 parts of the brain that they were watching that was affected. So they wanted to keep an eye on those 3 spots. And then I also have some, with the carotid artery, I have a stent here in my right carotid artery now. So the carotid web landed me some snazzy neck jewelry that's here in my neck, which I'm going to share that story with y'all. That procedure, I went back to the hospital for that like a month later, and it was supposed to be a 1-day procedure. Go in that morning and be discharged that evening. Well, I won a bed for a week. So I ended up in the hospital for a week because of the procedure of the carotid stent, for the stent here for my carotid web. What happened there was the stent, it's fine. The placement was fine, but they could not stabilize my blood pressure. My blood pressure just plummeted and they could not get it to rise, and they could not maintain it. So I ended up being in the hospital for a week. I was like, good Lord. And I was negotiating to get out of there that time. My first time in the hospital, I was there. All right, I slept most of the time. My first time in the hospital, because again, like I said, I was in ICU and on the stroke unit, and they were just running tests constantly. But the second go around, I was like, no, please let me go home. Please let me go home. And then here's a confession too. I'll say it while I'm live. I ended up in the hospital a third time. Not many people know that. I don't even know if my mom knows that. And what ended up happening, it was after the stent was placed. I was home. I was fine. And I started feeling a little different. I didn't know what it was. I just did not feel right. So I went in to the emergency room, which they immediately did another MRI, and they transported me by ambulance to the hospital that I ended up staying for 2 nights. Yes, I bought myself another stay in the hospital. My husband may have told my mom, I don't know. I did not, and this is the first time that I've mentioned it since. I was fine. Everything was fine, but precautionary measures. And they ended up they ran tests the 2 nights that I was there, all day, all night, which again was crazy because I'm like, I'm a healthy 40-something-year-old woman. The only time I'd been in the hospital before that was when I gave birth to my 3 children, which, by the way, I just have to say this. I birthed all 3 of them with no epidural. I was like, I can push these mamma jammas out. Ooh, yeah. So, being in the hospital for me was something all brand new. And let me show you guys this. So you see my Stroke Talks shirt? Yes, folks, Stroke Talks does have merchandise that you can purchase and support. So stroke, it's a brain thing. It should say it's a brain thing. Let me correct that real quick. There we go. Stroke, it's a brain thing because a stroke is a brain attack. I've had a lot of people ask me, is it a stroke a heart attack? No, they are not the same. They are not the same. And you can read more about strokes on my website at www.stroketalks.com. And I do have an article there talking about the difference of a stroke and a heart attack. So make sure you go check out www.stroketalks.com. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because, as y'all can tell, I am just rambling on. But if you or someone you know, if you're a stroke warrior, a stroke warrior, your family, friend, a caregiver, I also just shared a QR code up here that you can scan and complete that form to come on and share your story. Because I want to share as many stroke warriors' stories as possible. Because no 2 strokes are the same. No 2 people's story or journey is the same. And I want to share those stories and those journeys to bring awareness. Because again, for me, if you would have asked me this question 4 years ago, if I thought I would ever have a stroke, no. I would be like, no, I would never imagine that I, Sybil Jones, would be talking about strokes. Like, never. Never in my wildest imagine, like ever would have thought that I would be a stroke warrior. And I say stroke warrior. My R's, y'all. I will tell y'all, my R's since my stroke, my R's, I'm like, they don't exist anymore. But I would have never imagined. And I didn't know before my stroke, I didn't really know what a stroke was. I didn't know what anxiety, like, I don't want to say I didn't know what a stroke was. I knew, just because, but you don't really pay much attention to it because it's not affecting you in any kind of way. It was the same with anxiety. It was the same with depression, right? And I'm gonna go back to the mental health thing. I used to say, and I still believe it, that if you can get yourself up and feel and just get it, you will feel better. But I will tell you, there were days that, besides being afraid to leave my house, I didn't want to get up and get out of the bed. Right? I used to think, well, how could someone just not want to get dressed? I used to think that. Right? I used to be like, what do you mean? You're depressed that you can't get up and get dressed? There was a point to where it took a lot a lot for me to get up. Sybil, just get up and get your butt in the shower and get dressed for the day. It took me finding what brought me joy, like what literally made me happy. And I will talk about this as well, but people used to be like, get out of your head. I was like, no, I've got to get in my head. I had to dig deep and find the Sybil, because that was one of my other struggles, was I kept looking for pre-April 17, 2021 Sybil. I would look in the mirror and I saw the shell of Sybil pre-April 2021, but I wasn't that Sybil. I didn't feel like that Sybil. And a little bit of me didn't like that Sybil anymore. Why? Because that Sybil failed Sybil. It sounds crazy. It sounds crazy. But those are some of the hidden scars and those hidden battles that you don't see from a stroke warrior. Like, right? You're looking for those physical indicators. But what is going on mentally? So I had to tell my husband, and I say this now, and I will make this loud and clear in here at Stroke Talks, is be patient with the stroke warrior in your life. Yes, we need a little push. There's days, right? There's days you might be like, I need to give you a little push, but be gentle. Be gentle. They've been stubborn. I was told I was difficult. Right? I was told I was being difficult, but I wasn't. I wasn't being difficult, because that person that came home from the hospital wasn't. It was me, and my husband. We still talk about this to this day. I'm like, yes, it was me, but it wasn't me. I knew what happened, but I wasn't understanding what really happened. I had a lot of questions. And to this day, y'all, I still have a lot of questions. I look at this picture often. I zoom into that picture and I ask, like, what was it? What did I miss? What did we miss that day? What did we miss that week? What did we miss that month? What did we miss that year? And there's nothing that I can recall. But toward the end of 2024 of last year, I think that's when I really became comfortable with Sybil now. I wanted the Sybil before. There's things that are different about me to the naked eye, to, I say even to my family. They may not think there's anything different, right? They're, oh, you sound the same. You move the same. You act the same. But to me, there's a slur. I know that the feeling on my left side of my body is a little thrown off. I know that my processing has slowed down. I know these things, and some people are like, oh, well, you do realize you're 4 years older. I'm like, no, these are things that I noticed after my stroke. I noticed those things. I recognize just my anger, right? I recognize my emotions are sometimes off the charts. I recognize now when I'm starting to slip, like when it's like, oh, Sybil, I used to be on medication. Again, I'm an open book. When I went to the doctor in San Diego, when my husband was getting a little fed up with me, I went to my primary doctor, and he was referring me out to a therapist. They did put me on some meds, so I was taking those meds. Came here, I was on meds. I am no longer on medication now. I have regulated myself, and I'm perfectly fine. I won't say I'm 100% Sybil pre-stroke, but I will never be that Sybil again. I have accepted the Sybil today. I've accepted the Sybil who, I know and I recognize, like, this is another hidden scar of stroke. The energy that I had before pre-stroke, it's not there. I was used to, oh, I'm gonna go grocery shopping, go to the mall, go hang out with friends, go out there and do this, do that, and I could do all that in one day, right? It was perfectly fine. Now I'm like, all right, I drove to the store. Driving takes a lot out of me these days. It does. I'm driving again, y'all. Movement is interesting. I will tell y'all, speed is like, it's, the brain is like, oh, but that's for a whole nother live. But and some people are like, oh, well, Sybil, if I drive to the store, I'm tired too. Okay, that's you. That is your norm. But that was not my norm. That was not my norm. But I have now accepted that my norm is, okay, Sybil, you're going to drive to the grocery store. You're going to do a little grocery shopping. You're going to come home and you're going to sit down. You might need to take a nap. You may only be able to do one thing today. I've accepted that. Doesn't mean that I always obey and then I'm out for 3 days, right? I'm hoping to have a guest on. I'm going to reach out to her. It's a lady that I did meet while I was in San Diego, fellow stroke warrior. And we decided to meet for lunch. And we're like, we're going to meet for lunch, 2 hours tops. And I said, no, we We sat there, I don't know for how long, and both of us were out for like the next 3 or 4 days, right? Because it was draining. It was extremely draining. Again, for some folks, that's normal. For me, that's not normal. Just like when I finish this live here, I will be done for the day. Now it is almost 8 p.m. here in Bahrain, but I will be done for the rest of the evening and probably till mid morning. And I call it my stroke brain. It is what it is, right? Like I've had to learn those boundaries. But again, my stroke, because I'm a rambler, but I've always been a rambler, y'all. That's nothing new. But the cause of my stroke was a rare cause known as carotid webbing. Basically an extra shelf lining in the carotid artery. But I do have an article on the website about it, and I will come back and do a much shorter talk about carotid webbing. But all right, folks, thank you for watching and bearing with me as I try to make it through this first episode of Stroke Talks. It is really scary to share my story, but I'm gonna keep doing it. I'm gonna keep showing up and keep sharing my story, just like I want anyone watching, or if you know anyone who's a stroke warrior, to scan this QR code in the top corner here. Where is it? Yeah, here, because I want them to come on and share their story and journey here at Stroke Talks as well. All right. Thank you. Have a lovely evening or day or morning, whatever time it is where you are. And I will go back and respond to any comments later tomorrow. I'll respond to the comments tomorrow. All right. Thank you. Have a good night or good day. Bye. Be sure, like, comment, and share. I'm horrible. And